Right. Good stuff. Hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. So as I said, I am recording the session, and obviously we're here to provide you insight and guidance on your potential route to attain fellow membership. So I'm going to run through the presentation and we'll just take questions from there. You know, most of you should know me. I'm James, I'm Membership Director. Sarah, do you just want to introduce yourself to those that haven't come across you?
Yeah, thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. As James said, my name is Sarah Rajiv. I'm Head of Architecture, Design and Built Environment at Solent University in Southampton. I am also now a fellow member of the FCIAT, and I'm also one of the panel assessors. It could be possible that I might be looking at your application when it comes through. And I'm here to answer any questions with the application or any queries that I might be able to help with.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So, you know, as most of you should be aware, Fellow was launched on the 22nd of March this year, and it's a complementary class of membership that goes with your Chartered Architectural Technologist qualification. Now, any Chartered Architectural Technologist can apply, so there's no amount of years you have to have been a Chartered Architectural Technologist to potentially put yourself forward. The criteria or requirements that you need to meet are that you need to demonstrate significant contribution to architectural technology or excellence in architectural technology, or both of those, depending on the nature of your submission and your involvement with the discipline and the profession. So the only way to apply is via the website. So there's an online form that you fill in and address the relevant aspects of our requirements, and all being well, then the way we would encourage everyone to describe themselves would be as listed on the screen there. So Lorraine McCall, FCIAT, and then using the legally protected descriptor of Chartered Architectural Technologist, because it shows the competence and recognition of the respective chartered membership and the fellow status that we offer. So the main crux of your submission needs to be formulated around these 4 areas. Okay, and you should break down your application into each of these 4 sections. So you should have context, so a brief summary about you as an individual and your current role within architectural technology. You know, we don't need a history of where you studied, you know, how long you've been in industry, all the different jobs that you've done. We want a snapshot of where you are now and the level of where you're performing within architectural technology. Then you need to either address one or both of significant contribution and or excellence. So, you know, why you're applying, how and what you've contributed, how you might have achieved excellence, when, how, and in which sphere of architectural technology. So there are some people in this room that I know were involved in development of the T-level standards, which are in industry. I know there's some people in the room that were instrumental in the formation of our Future Professionals Network, which is aspiration. So there are 2 areas you could utilise to say this is significant contribution and this could also be excellence, but it's down to you to pitch your application accordingly. And another key one of what the fellow panel wants to see is the impact. You know, the impact of your commitment or your contribution or your excellence. You know, what has been the change or effective influence of your involvement, and what has the impact been? So has it been a local impact? Has it been a project delivery team impact? Has it been a national, international, or global impact? You know, what's that ripple effect of your involvement or your contribution or your excellence? And then we would like, again, a brief summary of the value of fellow membership to you and how you would use that to contribute further to architectural technology as a profession and a discipline. Now, the art of it all is you need to summarize this in a maximum of 1,650 words. Okay, the form will not let you put in more than 1,650 words. If you can do it in less, that's fine. Okay. And there will also be an option on the online application form to provide supporting evidence if you think it's relevant and it adds value to your submission. So there's not a requirement to provide supporting documentation, but it's your choice. Okay, we don't need to see the same level of information that you would submit for chartered status, as an example. You know, you're probably thinking 2, 3, or 4 documents of particular relevance that back up your narrative. Okay, and it's down to you on how you want to word this and how you pitch your submission to show your suitability for fellow. But as I said, you really should break it down in each of the 4 sections. I would argue that context and value should be concise and succinct, and the significant contribution and or excellence and the impact aspects should be the ones that have more text and more narrative. Now, to achieve fellow, upon submission, the fellow panel, so Sarah and her colleagues, would get your submission, they'll read through it and they'll make a decision. Decision can be passed, you're awarded fellow membership, or you might get a first deferral where they're asked for further clarification or maybe more evidence of a certain point that you've talked about for their ability to make a judgment, and you can resubmit for 3 times to meet the requirements to become a fellow member. There's no professional interview, it's literally a desktop assessment through the online submission. So it should be quite achievable quite quickly for some of you once you've formulated your statement. So it's £300 assessment fee to apply for fellow, and then assuming you're successful, there'll be a £75 additional fee on the annual subscription. So chartered members 285, it will be 360 for next year, and it will be that similar rate year on year, so 360 somewhere in line, and that will cover your chartered membership and your fellow status. Just remember that, you know, fellow member with some other organisations is a higher level of qualification. So CIOB is one example. With us, it's not. It's a complementary class of membership that awards a designation that sits with your chartered membership. Further details on the FAQs or the application process can be found at the link at the bottom of the screen. And obviously the idea is that the accolade of fellow demonstrates your eminence and sets a level of distinction within the discipline of architectural technology. Benefits will all be subjective to each individual, but they are listed on the screen there. With regards to your submission, other things to think about is, you know, think of it as pushing the boundaries or raising the bar or having that ripple effect of impact through the wider disciplines and contacts in industry that you engage with as an architectural technology professional. And really, you know, we're here to help you to a point. I've seen pretty much every fellow membership application that has come through already. So, you know, if you've got a final draft of your submission, then I'm happy to have a look at it and give you a few steers or pointers, or I might just say, yep, that's bang on the money, by all means go and submit, so that's fine. And just try and remember the points that I've made, that, you know, concise, succinct, impact, value, significance, excellence, they're the key things that you should be trying to cover within your submission. I don't know if Sarah now wants to come in and add anything to that before we sort of open it up for anyone to ask anything that they would like to ask.
Yeah, just to confirm what you've just said, James, that first and foremost, there's a word count limit, so 1,650 words. These are there for a reason. Try to use your word count wisely. Remember, this application is should demonstrate excellence over and above what you submitted when you applied for your chartered membership. Sorry, I can hear my echo, James. I don't know if someone's got their microphone on.
My mic's on. I'll just turn it off.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, that's better. So just to say, when you applied for your chartered membership, you've submitted your case studies, you submitted your evidence. The fellow grade you need to demonstrate excellence. So think of the day-to-day job. You need to think of something over and above the day-to-day job, because we are all, you know, should be performing at the top of our level in the day-to-day job. So whether it's mentoring, whether it's completing projects, whether it's submitting a piece of research, whether it's contributing to something else. To become a fellow, you need to demonstrate impact. So when you think of the examples that you want to submit, when you think of the case studies you want to include, it might be worth listing down what projects, what examples you want to include, and then narrow it to 1 or 2 and focus on those only. Because if you try to cover everything you do, you won't have enough space on the application side to remain within the 1,650 words. So pick 1 or 2 examples that you're most proud of, where you have made an impact on industry, on developing a certain standard or a new practice, something that is being rolled out within industry, within practice. So something where you have contributed to make an enhancement, to change something. So I'll give you an example. If you mentored a colleague at work, that's fine. But I think we all do that as part of the day-to-day job. So mentoring is a great example to include, but it needs to be of something of significance. If you have completed a project, you're probably completing projects, every few months, every few weeks. I don't know, depending on your workload. But the project that project needs to have something specific, something that made a difference to industry, to users, to whatever it was that you've pitched that project to. So think of that significance, think of the impact, think of the change that you have made through your actions that you want them to present to become a fellow. Probably James will come to this in a minute, but we don't need to hear every detail about your career journey from when you started. And we have had applications where the candidate listed everything they did since they were 17. That's fine, and I'm sure we're all proud of what we did when we were 17, 19, 18, but this is not the place to describe this. So be succinct, be focused, and use your word count to your advantage.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sarah. I said, the context and the value really should be like a concise summary, 1 or 2 sentences really just to set the scene. And this quality over quantity, look at the things you think are relevant and list them and weight them in importance or impact or significance or excellence, and then use that and start with number 1. The most important thing you think is relevant to the application. If you get additional words for number 2, start talking about number 2. And if you get space for 3, start talking about 3. But, don't send 15 different things, a bit of a scattergun approach, thinking, I'm trying to cover all bases here, because, that just dilutes the quality of your submission. So you need to focus it on the areas of your most significant contribution or your demonstration of excellence. Winning an award could be constituted as excellence, but you can all win an award, but what was the impact of you winning that award? What ripple effect did it have in industry? How did you raise the bar of architectural technology continually to further promote and push the discipline in the profession moving forward? These are the kind of things you need to think about, and you need to convey that in the written word to the fellow panel assessors, who necessarily won't have ever come across you. So it really is an art in getting your point across in the limited words that are available. But as I said, you can provide supporting documentation where relevant, but please don't provide reams and reams of information. I think that the application limits it to 30 meg, but I wouldn't be expecting anyone should really need 30 meg of evidence to support their submission. I said 2 or 3 documents may be of relevance. I suppose it might be worth opening up the floor really if anyone wants to ask a question. So you can put your hand up, or you can just ask a question, or as Anna's done, you can put a question up in the chat box if you prefer. Who'd like to go first? Come on, Mr. Clemens. I'm sure you've got something to say.
Right. Good morning, guys. I'm Jag Guru. It's thanks for giving us a bit of a lowdown on, the criteria for obtaining fellow membership, which I think all of us have got an interest in. And I think it's very important to understand what it is that we've got to put across, to obviously show that we have met the criteria. And I think what's very important as well is trying to understand how we actually contribute. So I think, it was very useful to hear that. But in terms of getting a draft, James, you mentioned that we can send it across to yourself beforehand if need be. I think I'd like to do that. Is there, in terms of the examples, do we need to provide examples, or would you be happy with just the written submission?
Yeah, so basically, the theory is it can take the form of an evidential statement. So as an example, if you had a car crash, you have to provide a written report to your insurance company, say, this is what happened, this is my statement, and this is used as my evidence. So we don't actually need any supporting documentation at the time of submission. If the panel then review that and say, yes, that's up to the suitable level and we're happy with that, then they can award fellow just based on your evidential statement. But they might choose to come back to you and say, you know what, Jag, I'm happy with most of it, but I'd just like to see a couple of examples of these things you've explained, just so that we can be sure in our judgment to award you, fellow. Yeah, so if anyone's not actually talking, put your microphone on mute, please, because there's some background noise in the event. So can you put your mic on mute if you're not talking, please? So yeah, you don't need to provide any evidence. It's just if you think it will add to that extra layer to your submission, then that's fine. That's your prerogative. That's your decision to make, should we say?
Thank you.
Also, Anne's question. Oh yeah, you basically you can go as far back as necessary. If you feel that it demonstrates significant contribution or excellence. So, we've had people that were involved in attaining the Royal Charter with FCIAT. So that was 2005, but he used that as his evidence for significant contribution. So, there's no line in the sand that says you can't use that. If you've done something 4 or 5 years ago that can demonstrate that point, then we will be happily consider that. I'm sure Sarah will back that up as well.
Yeah, that's correct, James. And I think that the most important thing is to show impact. This is what we'll be looking for, is whichever example you choose to submit, it's the impact that we'll be looking for. So you need to demonstrate that. You need to demonstrate that whatever you're presenting has made a difference, changed something in industry, changed perception, changed methods of practice. So it doesn't matter how far back it goes. Yeah,
I mean, another example, Anne, you seem to be enjoying the chat box today. So I know you're a panel moderator, okay? So that is you ensuring the Institute standards of excellence are maintained, and you're conveying that to the next generation of panel assessors within CIAT. So you're ensuring that experience and knowledge is passed down to the next generation, who will then in time take over from your role. So that would be one area that you could probably investigate further, showing about significant contribution and investment in the development of the future of architectural technology, if you see what I mean. So, there's quite a few ways that each of you could do. I mean, Jag, I know that you've got quite a few junior staff that you've employed recently, which I assume you're going to be mentoring through to chartered membership at some point. But, it's all well and good to say I'm mentoring them, but for some of that, you might need to have an example of, I've helped these 3 people through and they are all now chartered members, as an example, because that's a quantifiable contribution over and above your standard day-to-day roles. You're investing in them as the future and you're helping them on that journey, if you see what I mean. Sorry, Tanya, I see you've got your hand up if you'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, hi. Just quickly, are you doing these submissions in tranches, or can you just submit any time?
So you can submit any time. I mean, obviously they're coming in and it says that you get a decision within 28 days. So, we're going through one group at the moment, and then maybe every couple of weeks we're sending out the next batch to the fellow panel for review. So, you can submit any time, and then you'll just sort of join that group that we issue out at that stage, if you see what I mean. But generally you're getting a result within 2 weeks at the moment.
All right, okay, thank you.
But again, Tanya, I know what you've done for CIAT, and I know why you got your OBE, so that's a perfect example of significant contribution in my mind that you could elaborate upon.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Irfan, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, James. We kind of put forward, while if people have recently attained their chartered membership, for example, they have put forward everything that they have done in the recent, in regards to the projects or any other works they do, they kind of everything up. Is there a possibility to know that whatever we have mentioned in the chartered membership application can be used to attain the fellow membership, or is there any way that I can go back and check with them saying that, okay, that's what I have done, and then is there anything that we can?
So basically, from our perspective, you've demonstrated your educational practice and professional standards to meet the benchmark of being a chartered architectural technologist, okay? So within your chartered architectural technologist submission, it's up to you to go back and see whether there's anything within that that you think could be referenced and used for justifying significant contribution, excellence, or having a definable impact. So it's about, you know, going back to pushing the boundaries, raising the bar, doing things over and above your standard job role and functions. You know, are you taking architectural technology to the next level? So I'm not saying no, that it's not within your submission for chartership, but it's up to you to draw that out and focus in on it and delve a bit deeper, so that people like Sarah and the other fellow panel assessors can get a proper insight as to the particular relevance or importance of what you've done and how that constitutes the award of fellow membership, if you see what I mean. So it's up to you really to look back and decide what you could pull together.
Just to reiterate what James has said, it's really important to differentiate the fellow application from the chartered, the FCIAT application. The FCIAT application, you're demonstrating your competency in the core four areas. To become a fellow, you need to demonstrate impact, and I keep coming back to the word impact or significance, or significant contribution or excellence. So just because someone, for example, has developed a certain BIM code within their practice, that is probably not significant contribution, because that's something you probably be doing as part of your day-to-day job. But if that, whatever you developed, protocol or whatever system you've developed, was kind of rolled out to the wider community, if it was documented in a journal as a case study, if it was applied on a much wider scale, then this is impact.
Yeah, it's that sort of wider ripple effect, you know, to within your organisation or with the other company.
We lost you there for a bit.
Oh yeah, so I was just saying, as you're saying, you know, what you've done is the impact, is that ripple effect. So has it had an impact within the project delivery team, and now does everyone you work with want to use your standard as the benchmark moving forward because it's so excellent or so significant? Or has it had a wider national effect within your organisation that might be larger, and now it's being rolled out throughout the home nations, as an example? And that's that ripple effect, and raising the bar, as it were, based on what you've done over and above what's expected in your day-to-day job role.
And also, just to add, whatever example you decide to include, it really must be relevant to the architectural technology discipline. Recently, we had an application from a candidate who thought he would mention that he was an English teacher. Okay, he might have been an excellent English teacher, but that's not strictly relevant to architectural technology. So if you've traveled abroad and taught English, that's great, but how is that relevant to the discipline? So if you, for example, went and taught English to a non-English speaking country, where you maybe taught them the terminology that relates to construction or architecture technology discipline in the UK, as a result of that company or that community started adopting a technique that we use here in the UK as a result of you teaching them the language, then maybe that is impact. But just going to teach English is not impact. That's not totally irrelevant. So, and that's an example where this candidate when we're saying you be careful when you use the word count. Examples like these are irrelevant, so don't include them, because you'll just be eating away with your the word limit that you have.
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce you, Dave, if you can summarize it in a concise manner in 1,000 words, that's fine as well. You know, there really is an art in being concise and succinct, and you don't have to put extra words in for no reason if you feel you've covered what you want to demonstrate in less words. So, you know, you're the author. It's down to you to write your story and to convey that through the submission. But, you know, if you go to the website, and the link that I'm just going to put on the screen here, so if you go to the FAQs, architecturaltechnology.com/FCIAT, then there'll be an application form, click here, and you just need to put in your personal details, and then it will take you straight into the form, and you need to break it down into those 4 areas, you know, context, significance, excellence, impact, and value. And then you start writing, and then you add in your evidence, you press submit, you then self-declare, so you don't need anyone else to sign it off. You just declare that, you know, this is factual, honest, and I will comply by the code, etc., etc. and then you just pay by card, and then the submission comes straight through to us, and then we send it round. Well, and you probably could take some screen grabs and use that as supporting documentation as an example, as evidence if you need for the Twitter critter thing you're talking about. There may be projects that may meet the criteria, but I'll be required to sign a non-disclosure agreement before leaving. That's a tricky one, Vulton, because if you're not allowed to talk about it, then how can you talk about it? I don't really necessarily have the answer there. I mean, what I would probably recommend is you try and think of some other examples in your sort of, you know, top 5, and then you weight each of them. And then if, you know, if your top 1 is a non-disclosure agreement, you're sort of limited to a point that you can't talk about it, albeit you could probably talk about the principles of what happened in the project without necessarily giving away any information in relation to what that project was, where that project was, who that project was for. So there might be a way for you to talk about it in a general sense, in the principles of what you did, without disclosing any confidential information. So that would really be down to you to formulate your words accordingly to make sure you're in compliance with what you've signed up to abide by. I noticed Tom's just writing away. I mean, has anyone actually started writing their submission? Will, I think you said you started yours, haven't you?
Yeah, I started writing, try to put some words down, but yeah.
Well, I mean, in your instance, Will, I know that you were involved with FCIAT with the formation of aspiration. So, you know, that's really taken off within FCIAT now. So I would say that's a perfect example for significant contribution to architectural technology. And
yeah,
that in my opinion, would be number 1 that you start talking about.
And hopefully, when you talk about the ripple effect, I think if anything that's still going now and still affecting people, I think my interesting thing is I don't know the measurable impact necessarily of where we obviously started it. However many years when I started writing it, I suddenly realised how long ago it was that we did it. So yeah, obviously it's touched lots of people since. I don't necessarily have the metrics for how many people have been through it and come out the other side, and how many people are now on council because of it and things. So, but yeah, hopefully that.
Well, I think you started from a base point of 0. And
yeah.
And you could, like, so myself or Dorota could easily give you details on, you know, the current number of aspiration chairs throughout the regions and the centres. As one example, and you can say, you know, 6 years later, it's still going strong. And we've got 15 chairs throughout the UK, Ireland and Europe. And we're about to potentially open up other ones in India and America. You know, that's the kind of thing we could help you with if you want a few, like, headline infos on how they're still going and which ones are still operating. And again, you know, there's various aspiration events on the website as well. But I don't think Sarah would need to see the link of all to all the events that are being held by Aspiration. I think most of the fellow panel have come across Aspiration and know of Aspiration. And if you were integral in instigating that, then I'm sure Sarah would back me up that that's pretty significant.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, that's correct. That's a great initiative, and that's a great example of impact. You know, Aspiration has impact on a lot of upcoming architecture technologists and students. So, great example.
Cool. I'll just need to finish it off.
Right, good stuff. Has anyone else got any burning questions they'd like to ask? Obviously, questions might come up after the event. And as I said, I'm happy to look at a final draft. Just because I say, yeah, that appears to be in line with what we'd expect, you can submit that, by no way means that's a pass. I will always say that in my email. In my opinion, I think you're ready to submit. However, it's for the fellow panel to make a judgment because, they're the AT professionals in that sphere, more so than myself, who's just sort of the facilitating the access, should we say, on behalf of CIAT.
I don't know, James, if it's worth mentioning that I don't know if you mentioned this, but worth mentioning that the applications will be looked at by 2 assessors and a moderator.
Well, yeah, there's due process to go through. Some of you do interview assessments and panel assessments for us. So, the interview assessment process, the panel assessment process, and that there's moderators that oversee fair and consistent standards of assessment. So, yeah, you will have 3 people looking at your submission to make sure there's a democratic agreed judgment around what the decision is. If you get a deferral, we're not going to say, oh, sorry, that's not good enough. not worth trying again. We'll say, right, we've looked at your submission. We note there's some areas that could potentially demonstrate impact or significance or excellence. Have you thought about these areas and delve in a bit deeper into these, and or could we see some examples of the following points? So, you know, it will be a bespoke response based on your initial submission, and then potentially giving you a steer of what your first deferral might be, and then you resubmit that as and when you're ready. And then obviously, hopefully you might pass second time around, but you could get a second deferral. And then at that point, again, we'll give you a bit more of a steer as to whether you're along the path of being in a position to meet the requirements. But we want to sort of help you on that journey without necessarily giving you the answers, should we say. So there's a few questions over here. Projects for overseas charities which impacted communities meet the criteria. So if that's a voluntary role that you've undertaken, that you've chosen to utilise your knowledge and skills within architectural technology, and it's had a wider beneficial impact for society, then I would say yes, that is something that you could consider using as an impact and demonstrating significant contribution and or excellence. But again, you know, it's up to you to word your application accordingly to show how that is particularly significant to your consideration to become a fellow member. Yeah, so mentoring colleagues, you know, yes, mentoring colleagues is going over and above your standard roles and functions. What we've tended to see is, you know, people saying, I am mentoring people through, but they haven't come through yet. So therefore, you know, the likes of Sarah and her fellow panel assessors said, well, you know, we can't quantify what they've actually done here until they've actually done it. Whereas if you can say, you know, I signed up to the FCIAT Mentor Match Me scheme and I've helped 6 people through to chartered membership already, and I've got another 4 on the books, then that would quantify you've made an investment and you're making an impact because you've helped 10 architectural technologists on their journey to professional qualification. Yeah, so whoever's leaving, you know, that's fine. Go off to your next meeting. So that's all good. So yes, Phil, it could be relevant, but you need to pitch your application accordingly and show the impact or the contribution or your excellence of it. Okay, well, you know, if I'm going to propose we potentially wrap up there unless anyone's got any more questions that they'd like to ask here and now. But, you know, based on the discussions and the message chat that's coming up and the people that are in the room, you know, I think it's potentially achievable for all of you, but it's how you tell your story, and please relate it back to these areas and think of the most important things you can talk about that demonstrate significant contribution, excellence and impact. The context and values should just be a brief introduction and summary at the end, really. The main sort of meat on the bone should be those 2 main areas, but please structure your application when you fill in the form against those 4 areas, and then it's crystal clear for the likes of Sarah when they need to look at it, that they're looking at right context, yet significance, excellence, impact, value. It makes their life easier. It makes your submission more inclined to be, you know, logical, orderly, and to be awarded a pass, should we say. So the application form, and literally you just fill in a Word document, you start writing, and then you go to the link on the CIT website and you just start filling in the online application form. It's like if you're applying for the student awards or the AT awards, it's all done through the website now. So there'll just be a text box on the website, and then you can just cut and paste in your wording from your document into that text box on the form. But it won't let you go above 1,650 words. Right, there we go. I shall await some applications coming through next week.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, James.
That's
Have a good day, all.
You're
All
welcome.
right, yeah, cheers, Jack.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cheers, Jack. Cheers, Tanya.
Thanks, folks. It's great.
Right, stop. Let me stop recording.
Thank you, James.
All right.